Hated for us someplace. I know it is.
Doug Rowdy,
Here.
Jay Luke,
Here.
Jeremy Hall. There's, I believe John's online, so there should be 4 members present.
Yeah, he's online. He's just got to unmute himself if he wants to talk.
Unmute yourself, John, if you want to speak.
I imagine you're not.
All right, we'll assume that he's here. Approval of the agenda. I know John, if he was speaking, he'd be right on that.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion made and approved to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Approval of the minutes from the January 6th, 26th meeting.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Public comment. Any public comment? Going once. Twice. Moving on to receive information from supervisors not seated. I see none. Discussion of possible action regarding the large assembly ordinance. And I'm sure we have a presenter here for that.
Oh, what? Okay, so the large assembly ordinance has been in place since like what, the 70s, I think. But we have found quite a few things wrong with it. There was a slight change to some things a couple of years ago, but we really kind of took what the practice was. We talked to multiple different departments to kind of make sure that zoning was covered and that the health department stuff was covered, and actually incorporate an enforceable license, which was also a problem previously. So we provided in the packet both the red line version and a clean copy of that red line version. One main thing that I found to be difficult was in the old one. It had 2 things like kind of separately laid out of here's what we need, but here's the description of what we need. And so we kind of put those things together. So as an applicant, it was much easier to read as to what exactly the conditions were that they need to meet for that license. So if there's any questions.
Not got to read it.
Mr. Chair, can I elaborate?
Yes.
So this started last year when we had all at once a music fest assembling in our county, and it was the same week as the Polk County Fair. In fact, then there was 2 music fests the same weekend, which for a law enforcement issue is concerning to have an additional 3,000 to 5,000 people come to your county and not be able to plan for it. So when we reviewed this ordinance, there was a lot of towns that didn't even know about it. So I think at some point we have an education piece we have to do, go to the town association, let them know about this ordinance. And then secondly, to make it enforceable. And what we found is though we had the ordinance, the way it was written, it was unenforceable. So I would have had no teeth to shut down those venues had they not worked with us. Last year, when we learned of the one event, an entourage of us went and met with the organizers, and we found that they had pretty much complied with everything. And if they would have filled out the permit, we would have probably issued it, or Shabana would have issued it. So it really came down to cleaning up some of the language. We still have a few concerns, I think, even in this red line form that maybe we might want to take a little extra time to continue to amend it and work on it. My emergency manager has had a few concerns with it, but overall, it just would be positive to have something so that people know in advance if they're going to have a large music fest or any large gathering of over 1,000 people, they meet these requirements so that we don't have to worry if there's adequate law enforcement, fire, EMS, food truck inspections, all these things that you want to make sure we have a safe event. So that's kind of how we got to this point.
And to touch on the enforceability, the way it was previously written made it difficult to issue citations or try to create a type of penalty for not complying with the requirement to get the permit. If you got the permit, we theoretically could enforce against you, but it was if you completely refused to do anything, our options were significantly limited in how we could enforce. Essentially, if we wanted to enforce anything, we would have to go file in court, get an injunction, and prevent you from having your event. And that as the sheriff pointed out, isn't necessarily always the best option. So these changes, as they currently are being presented, provide that extra ability of us, for us to enforce the ordinance if people fail to get the permit. I like the idea of taking as many things into consideration and adding as many things as possible to the ordinance. I just want to emphasize that because of that problem, it might be good to get it passed sooner rather than later. So whatever additions or changes you're going to make, I would ask that the committee and ultimately the board make those decisions relatively quickly so that when we come into large event season, which is generally during the summer, we have something that is enforceable. Because again, the biggest problem right now is the issue with the enforceability of the ordinance as it's currently written. So whatever language you adopt, it may not be perfect, but I think we get something on the books sooner rather than later, and then potentially come back and amend it again, maybe even.
And I think we need some time too, once we can get it passed, to get the word out. So for the one event last year, told me they asked their town officials if they needed anything, and they said no, not that they were aware of. So I just think it's a good idea to get this going forward so we can work with these people trying to organize things and make sure that they're done correctly.
And that's not a bad idea to include in the resolution at the end when, when we have our lobbying resolutions, we always put at the bottom for the clerk to distribute to the governor, et cetera. We could, at the end of the resolution amending the ordinance, say the updated ordinance shall be distributed to all the towns. And then it's still on the sheriff or staff or whomever, the administrator, whomever, to reach out to the towns, make sure they're aware, and do that education campaign as well. So we can certainly draft the resolution that way. I did want to address one additional thing. I handed out a copy of the large public assemblies with 2 extra little sections on it. On page 3, I added to 2821 under licensure, subsection C and D. For subsection C, my proposed addition is to add the language that all plans, limits, standards, and requirements set forth in subsection B and any approvals or modifications by the county are conditions precedent to license issuance and upon issuance are incorporated into and become continuing conditions of the license. Failure to implement or maintain compliance with any such conditions constitutes a violation of this article and of the license. And then sub D, any subsequent change to the approved plans or standards in subsection B must be submitted to the county clerk and relevant departments for approval prior to implementation. Unapproved deviations constitute a violation enforceable under section 28-23. So subsection D basically says if you're going to change any of your plans, if you're going to implement something other than what you submitted in your license application, you need to go get that reapproved. You would need to notify us that you're changing it and we need to be aware of it. And if you don't notify us and we don't approve it, then that in and of itself is going to be a violation, even if it otherwise wouldn't have been. And sub C is really just clarifying that everything that you include in your application, you need to follow through with. And that we believe was clear in the language, but I wanted to add that section simply to really make it as clear as possible to people looking at this ordinance that not only do you have to present a plan, but you need to actually follow through with it. So that's what those 2 sections are.
Okay, and how do we include the plan as far as this meeting goes?
So right now, what is on the agenda is what we had originally proposed. I don't know that necessarily the committee needs to adopt or take any formal action, but if the committee were to move that language be added, it would be clear to us that when we come back with a formal resolution that we make sure that language be included, if that makes sense.
Okay. Anybody want to make that motion so we get it included in the Final version.
You need a motion that C and D on page 3 has been presented and we understand what's happening. Is that what you need?
And that you would like it included in the final
Or
ordinance.
included in the final? And that too.
I'll second.
Motion made and second to, not gonna repeat that. La-di-da-di-da. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Recommended to be in the plan.
And so otherwise, does the committee have any additional questions about what the changes are or why they were made or?
I have one about the fencing. You know, I read all this about the fencing in there. On fencing, but they gotta have it so that if there's an emergency, it's got gates that can be taken down quicker. So, you know, how are you gonna fence in 1,000 or 1,500 people and have a quick way to get them out? I don't know, that just kind of threw me. I mean, the wording in there states that should be able to be people that could be passed through, I guess. So if it was that plastic snow fence, well then the first 10 people through would have it flat and you'd keep on going, I guess. But, the other concern I had with it is, and I'm sure it's in there, I couldn't really find any verbiage. In the event of a large storm, where do these people go? I mean, is there a building in the vicinity that'll hold that many people in an emergency, or don't we concern ourselves with that? I know we do at the fair.
Right.
Fair's got quite a few more people, but, and you can't expect somebody putting an outside concert on to have a storm facility. That doesn't make any sense, but I don't know, where are these people gonna go if a tornado comes over the hill? You know, or is that a risk they take to go there? You know, is that our concern? I don't know, I didn't read thorough enough to find that it's actually covered in here. Emergency management, this is kind of your area. Have you read it? How do you feel?
Yeah, I did read it. There is no contingency for that in the plan. It says an emergency response plan under 14, but it doesn't specify. It just talks about EMS. So I would concur that there should be something in there regarding an emergency plan and taking into account severe weather, not just a tornado, but it could be severe heat or cold that could impact the event as well. That my recommendation would be that they have a plan to address that, and maybe that plan is to evacuate. There's no place to shelter that many people from a tornado virtually anywhere in the county in an open area, but they should have a decision point and they should be have a consult with the National Weather Service or another weather bureau to ensure they're getting weather updates, and that service is available for free. And then their plan should address who's the person who can close the event or shut it down, that those contacts should be listed on the permit. So if we want to have that conversation with the event planner to make sure that they do have that plan in place, that we could verify that. So, yeah.
Would that be law enforcement's call at that point, or would it be the organizer?
Well, that's the interesting part of this. There's a lot of stakeholders. So when we met with the group last, we had public health, we had Mr. Norby. You know, we've consulted with Joe Losso's team quite a bit on this. But yeah, I think ultimately the sheriff would have the authority to say your event is shut down if we had to. I would pursue through Joe Losso's office court orders to shut the event down if there was some problems. But our goal is really to make this where if they meet all the expectations of this, we don't have these issues. The fear is someone just organizes a spare of the moment music fest and we get 5,000 people showing up. And then you have all these issues.
You had a couple of those last year that were unlicensed.
We did, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a social media thing all of a sudden where we saw,
Yeah.
1,500 people attended this event at a place, and
Yeah.
you know, it's a concern. It presents a concern from fire, EMS, from all points, public health, sanitary issues.
Yeah.
those things get out of hand.
Yeah, and I will say, when we did meet with them, they had hired a professional organizer and they really had all these things in a row for the one that we knew about. The other one happened, we didn't even know what was going on. We learned after the fact that this place had an event and they said they had over 1,500 people. Whether that was accurate or not, I don't know, but that's another purpose of the fence, is so you know what's coming in, and obviously,
Just by having the plan and applications thereof, notifying the authorities that there is something happening is great. You know, we used to get our information from a police department over in Minnesota that they're coming to the Nevers Dam area. They came by thousands of young kids, 17 maximum, 17, 18 years old, by the hundreds and thousands. There were over 5,000 at one weekend, after schools got out, and fortunately we knew about it, so we kind of shut things down a little bit, but that was the end of it. But that was happening every year, and you never knew when, and it was not organized. Obviously, we didn't have any such a thing as a permit, and there was just a bunch of kids, word of mouth, and over they came by the hundreds and hundreds. Had all kinds of problems. People killed. There was one death, or one got rolled over in a car, and I mean, it was a mess. So those things can be out of hand, and just knowing about them is quite an asset or a help.
And that's something we incorporated in this too, because before there was no clear path of, once we got the application, there were no steps as to take after it. It's supposed to be submitted to the county clerk's office, and then I always reached out to Brian Hobbs down in public health just to check and see if they've gotten any permits that they needed, but that was it. That was all, and that wasn't even written in there to be required. I just checked with him to make sure. And then it was the county clerk's office issuing this permit that hasn't, necessarily been checked by everybody it should be. So it is in there to include all these other, departments and people to notify that there is even an application, and then also once the license has been issued. So it's at both steps that people will be notified.
Yeah. That's great.
I see there, they need to provide an emergency response plan. Is that as far as we need to go with that then? I mean, we don't really have the authority to say, well, you gotta have this, this, and this. You have to have a plan for when the sheriff says there's a tornado coming, you gotta.
well, I think we can incorporate it through, continuing probably to work on this document, and amend the ordinance, but to start with, we'd like to get it going forward. But like, for example, some of the language talks about one EMT in an ambulance. Well, you can't just have one EMT and an ambulance. You'd need a full crew. So I think there's work to be done on it. It's just, we'd like to get it. I'm really comfortable with the way we've cleaned up the language so that is enforceable, that we can issue citations if there would be a lack of getting a permit and we learn of this event. Our goal is to get compliance. It isn't to write a bunch of tickets, but if there's no teeth to something, they're gonna just do it anyway.
So what's the responsibility, legal counsel, of this committee as far as this, it's a discussion?
So as of right now, it's just a proposed ordinance change. There is no resolution in front of you. So what we're asking for is a conversation about what changes are there. Ultimately, if there's anything additional that you guys, you folks wanted to see, we could incorporate that into whatever ordinance language gets attached to the resolution. And then I think our intention was to have this committee take it up. It's to go in front of HHS, I think, next month. And then ultimately, the resolution, after they consider any potential changes, would come to this committee for movement up to the board. Right, that's our plan.
Yeah, I think so. I think this committee could even look at it, and then HHS could review it, just to look at it after, unless there's anything from.
Notification and some communications with towns, reference to the ordinance.
Yep, and so we can put that at the end of the resolution that we draft. So upon adoption of the ordinance change, the clerk is to distribute a copy of this to all municipalities within the county or something to that effect.
All right.
So we can do that as part of the resolution itself.
Sounds to me like multiple people are involved in the planning and getting improvement made to it as we go through it.
One EMT crew.
Essentially.
He's stopping.
Okay, are we done chewing on it?
I am.
You guys still chewing over there? You done?
Done.
Okay, moving on then. Great discussion, possible action regarding resolution 0326, resolution lobby for transportation. Funding solutions. Who we got that's gonna talk to us about that?
I'll start out. This was one of the lobbying resolutions that I talked about, coming from the WCA, lobbying for, more sustainable transportation. So this was a ordinance sent out by the Wisconsin Counties Association for each county to adopt to tell our legislation that we need more sustainable funding for transportation.
Okay, looking for a motion to move it on.
I move it on. The board with approval.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Heard nothing out of John yet, so.
Be quiet.
I'll be on the wrong time.
Number 9, discussion and possible action regarding DNR MOU on the Stour Trail, Seven Lakes Trail.
Yes, Mr. Chair, bring you up to date. We met with DNR on the 28th of January to go over the MOU. Had a really good meeting with DNR. Missy Vanderloot came up from Madison. She's the section chief. So we had 5 DNR personnel, I believe, there, along with county staff. Went over the MOU and the planning cycle that board directed us to negotiate and look at. DNR is willing to take on the planning process for the Stour Trail. Along with that, it'll be done on an ecological landscape planning process, which ties in trails and forest land all the way across. It's kind of an odd shaped section. It's encompasses 14 counties. But they look at, when they do the planning process, then they look at the trails and conductivity and how they work across that with the uses and everything with that. Being that we're listed on the MOU, Corporation Council worked out language having us as the main stakeholder in the trail, so we have a seat at the table. If we would give the trail back to DNR flat outright and they still did the planning process, we would just be then public. We'd have just as much input as the public. But being that we're redoing the MOU, that gives us a seat at the table as a primary stakeholder in this. We talked about maintenance. We stand right now running off the 2004 master plan. Since the other one is not implemented yet, this planning process would take about 18 months. So it is a long process, just like all the other ones. They will take all the information that Tool Design did, our staff did with him, and incorporate all that and utilize that data for their plan also. We also talked about maintenance and coming back and being able to open up the MOU once the plan is done, if there's changes in uses on the trail. So that if there's funding that's needed to change the trail for the usage, that we can talk about who's gonna pay for that. Right now, we've sent this off to DNR to put in their new template with those concerns. We're working back and forth with staff on that. So just want to get your thoughts on moving forward, that we're going down the right path. Still engaged in an MOU with the DNR. But they will take over the planning process, for the trail. They'll do the public, outreach, the public information meetings, public hearings, and they'll do all that. I don't know if you want to add anything, Joe?
One additional thing, Missy also pointed out that it is somewhat convenient that we are exploring this option right now because they happen to be starting the master planning process for that region of the state. If we were maybe a year or two ago, we wouldn't have this option necessarily to be part of this process. They might take it back, but then we would have to wait for them to initiate the next master plan, which would have been 2 years. But if we delay and don't take up this option or opportunity now and wait a year or two, we would be in a similar situation. The only difference being we would have to wait. They would say, okay, we'll take back the master planning process, but we're not going to do master planning again for 15 years. So you guys are going to sit and wait. So it's pretty convenient that we are looking at this option right now because they are just starting to get into the master planning process of this section of the state. And they itemize the trails too. So they are going to begin the process for that large section, which was across however many counties,
14 counties.
But then they also make a specific plan for each trail within that section. So it's a generalized, how are trails used within this region? And then more specifically, how should usage be somewhat different from that regional usage on this specific trail? So as Mo pointed out, we would be a primary stakeholder. What that means is they'll still have all the normal public hearings. They'll still take into account everyone's position, but in between public hearings, when information needs to be provided or when they have questions about how maintenance works, or if they have questions about the general usage or historical usage of the trail or what the people of Polk County want, they will reach out to us in between those public hearings, and we will have additional opportunities to provide input on what we would like to see, what we've seen historically, what we've seen as problems, how we see what we see as good opportunities to overcome those issues, et cetera. So we have more stake in that master planning process than the average person. That's what we're looking at right now. Again, we're waiting for them to provide us with a copy of the language that they would like to see. And then, of course, we've provided the changes to our current contract that I drafted up. And they're going to use that to create a whole new contract because they have a new template that they're using. So we don't have that yet, but.
And we'll get this information to the full board in February also, and be working on the MOU at the same time, hoping to get the MOU signed by both parties by the board meeting in March. That we're on the right track.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a question about the maintenance. And in our first discussion, we talked about, I'm just quoting, I don't remember, I thought it was $35,000 for the trail. But we could go with the 90-day. I don't know what I'm saying. There was 90 days we could get out of that. Are we looking at that or not because of this new?
Right now, we're not looking at that, because if we did the 90-day clause, we'd be giving the whole trail back to them and the planning, and then we wouldn't have a seat at the table.
So this gives us an option to stay at the table. That's all I was really asking.
This gives us a seat at the table and that primary stakeholder.
At any time, we can implement the 90 days, or they could.
But there's no opportunity to get some of that money back because we're doing it for the DNR. No.
So action wise, what are you looking for from this committee? You're already authorized by the whole county board to negotiate the MOU, right?
Right.
So are you looking for endorsement to continue that?
I think we're looking for endorsement at the committee level and then at the county board in February that we're on the right path to stay with that and continue the negotiation with them doing the master planning, but having us as the primary stakeholder engaged in the MOU.
Are you interested in the motion?
I can make a motion to continue the course. At this point, it sounds like a good option, I guess, to me.
I'll second that.
Are we making a recommendation?
I,
The motion, is this committee making a recommendation to continue on the same course? Is that,
Right. You're moving to recommend the administrator continue the negotiation process on the path.
that's what you said, right?
That's what I'm
Yeah,
trying to
okay. All those in favor?
I,
All right, opposed, same side. Okay. Fair Society update.
I have no update. There hasn't been any reason for any kind of communication on our end, so I haven't had any with Fair Society.
Nor have I, because I got to the meeting on that coldest night we had there and there was nobody there but me. So,
how was your meeting?
I don't, yeah, it's pretty short. So hearing no others, nothing for you, Mo.
No.
We'll go on to the update for the CJCC.
Yeah, for January, we did not host a first-time offender class, but we saved all the referrals from then and we are on track to do a class next week. So we had 5 referrals in process this month for our class. Our substance diversion program, we had 1 new referral, no current participants at this time, but 2 still in process that we're working on. Our intoxicated driver intervention program, we didn't have any new referrals this month, but we do still have 2 current participants. Our treatment court, we have 12 current participants, 3 new referrals. We had 1 that was ineligible and then 2 referrals that are currently in process that we're working on. And then our MRT class, we have 5 current participants and last month we had 2 graduations. So very exciting to have our first two graduations out of the community schools.
Is there an upcoming graduation of the 12 that are in the work program?
We're anticipating we'll have 3 this spring. So as we get a little bit closer, I'll keep you guys updated as to where we're at with those.
Got any comments or questions?
None.
Hearing none, we need the public works update next.
After our meeting with the DNR, we held them back and had some discussion pertaining to the 270th bridge north of Luck. And they will be removing that. They're just not entirely sure when. So they will, that's the bridge that continually is getting hit. So they're gonna remove that and do a bunch of grading to the roadside for that one. The new equipment has been getting installed at recycling, and if you haven't been there lately, I'd encourage you to stop in and take a look at the way that new stuff operates and looks. It's quite the difference in what we had. And then the bridge at Edie Kennedy is removed and the new one should be in place by the end of this month. And then they'll have some work to do in the spring. They got to do some asphalt work and for the approaches on the bridge, but they should be substantially complete by the end of the month. That's all I have.
Any questions or comments? Update from highway then.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Well, temps and sunlight are improving. Crews have been busy pushing back shoulders, cutting brush and trees, as well as constantly patching numerous potholes. Following our last meeting, I submitted our CHI County Highway Improvement and CHI D and CHI S funding applications for the 26-27 LRIP funding cycle. Chairman Warrendahl and myself attended the WCHA Winter Conference, January 13th through the 15th, down in La Crosse, a new venue, been at the Chula and the Dells for many years. We sat through presentations from WISDOT, the WCHA, and some of the WCHA associate members or vendors that were in attendance. Highway, we interviewed 7 candidates for our open position, and we'll be extending an offer this afternoon. The candidates all participated in a scored interview, as well as a truck skills rodeo course and a payloader operation test that we scored them on. We just opened bids on 2 replacement flagger vans and 1 foreman truck. Low bids came in close to our expected budget numbers, which was nice. There were no big surprises there. We submitted our choices for bid and all the info to the administration, and pending approval, we'll order the equipment. I don't have a financial report this month as we're working on year-end closing, and Carrie was not able to close out January to run a report for today. And I just wanted to say thank you for supporting the transportation funding solution resolution. That's a big deal, and that show of support from hopefully all 72 counties will urge the legislature to make some improvements in that long-term funding. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions or comments for the highway commissioner?
I just have one question. Is that in this economy, is that about average having 7 applicants, or is that a good this time?
Considering recent years, that wasn't too shabby to have 7 applicants. We had more applicants. They were narrowed down to 7. We were willing to interview once a few were taken out of the pool due to lack of the minimum qualifications like commercial driver's license. So I think we had around about a dozen total applicants, and then we interviewed 7 of them. So
Pretty good, I think.
Getting better, but I can remember having 125 or 145 applicants.
Years ago, yeah.
yeah, it's changed.
I know the sheriff, when we talked at one time, or in the committee, but it was only 3 that showed up one time and, he used to say that the whole room was full. So the change. All over.
Yeah. I love the green lights. I think we get complacent about lights, especially amber lights. You get so used to seeing amber, but once in Burnett County, I come over hill and there was, the green light, and it stuck out, and then the boys are patching right down here too today. Sticks out good. Green light legislation was a good deal, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a more visible light spectrum for the human eye. And like you said, they talk about amber light fatigue with every utility and locator and all the utility companies all running amber all the time. You just sort of get too used to seeing it. The greens just really stand out. The guys are really happy we implemented them too. They think it helps.
Hopefully they can control it and keep it with highway transportation instead of the others jumping on. But okay, thank you very much. Update from the sheriff. Next.
Taking one of each of these. Yes, and no.
Supervisor Bonneprice on? He's been after me for the big announcement for a while, so I included in those handouts there my press release that I'm not running for sheriff this term. I'm going to retire at the conclusion of my term and going to go live the good life, as they say. So, it's been an honor and a privilege to serve as the sheriff. I truly have enjoyed working with all of you. And I would remind everybody, I still got 11 months to be the sheriff. So I want to finish strong. I want to keep on it every day. This is a lifestyle, as Jay probably knows. I mean, it really becomes part of your lifestyle. So it is kind of interesting to think you're hanging up the guns, as they say, but I do look forward to the next chapter. spending more time with my family and friends and, just going on with life. So, with that, I do intend to endorse, Don Burrows, who is the chief deputy, as you guys know. Don has been key to my success in this role, so naturally I'm gonna support him in his venture. So, with that, I also included on that other handout, and if those could keep getting passed down.
I staff. Just
I included the 2025 drug numbers provided by ACES, which is the drug reporting form we use. 337 total drug cases in 2025, which, that's pretty much one a day, close to one a day for drug cases. I think this shows the hard work that is done of the men and women in law enforcement in this county. We get after it every day. Some of the things that are kind of interesting to me is if you look at the meth related arrests by day of the week, obviously Friday was the busiest, but they're pretty consistent. Sunday is probably the only day that isn't consistent for a high number of meth arrests. I always like looking at some of this data. One of the things I would say is if you look on the last page too, is I like to break it down into pounds. They always give us in grams, but under methamphetamine, that's over almost a pound and a half of methamphetamine we took off the street last year. And 10 pounds of marijuana we took off the street. So think about the lives that changed by getting that off the street, the dysfunction that we interrupted by keeping that off the street. So interestingly enough, we see like a little increase in cocaine recently, but I think there's probably supply chain interruptions with the closed border now. We're gonna maybe see a little shifting to other drugs. I hope we see that. We should see a downward trend with a closed border and a secure border. I think we'll see less narcotics coming across and into our communities, because ultimately the drugs that are introduced into Polk County come from our southern border typically. So hopefully we see a reduction. A couple guns seized in the past year. Cash seized, $12,000. And again, 337 approximate investigations, so almost one per day. And that's good activity. In addition to this, we're always doing every other call that comes in. So a lot of these drug stops and drug interdictions are self-initiated activity on behalf of the men and women that are out working. It's also proportionate to our canines. Our canines get out and do tremendous work. The dogs are such a valuable resource to have out there for making these drug cases. So proud of the work. So with that, that's all I really have for you guys today. We've been busy, as you know, we had a tragic fire this past week in Wanderers. Definitely feel the hit of our community on that. The community's really rallied around that incident and a lot of fundraisers. But I think that speaks volumes about the community we live in. Any questions?
Go ahead.
It wasn't so many years ago that we talked about the cocaine being just south in the Polk County. Evidently, I just stood out to me right here with 2 cocaine arrests that keeps coming north.
Yeah, I think it's probably a supply thing. If there's less meth coming in, maybe there's more, you start taking if you had your choice of everything, meth is the most bang for your buck if you're an addict, I think. So that was always the preferred drug. So I think now maybe if there's a reduction in supply, they look elsewhere at other things, but hopefully we see these things go down.
One more question. Could you explain the south? You said the drugs were coming in from the south. Because years ago, we always thought it was coming across Highway 8 coming in.
Well, I think the main supply comes in. I first met Sheriff Mark Lamb from Final County, Arizona, because he said everybody is impacted by his southern border drug epidemic. When the drugs, we don't have the labs anymore. We don't see people manufacturing the drugs. We see them selling the drugs and distributing. So there's this national supply chain of illicit activity, obviously, but a lot of the origins of that come through Mexico and come through that border.
So my pea brain was going with Polk County, but you were talking.
Oh, I understand, but yeah, the Twin Cities is the hub of drug activity. That's where most people go to get their drugs, is to the Twin Cities. So that's where you find the large supplies.
I just was lost in the.
So, you have an overdose. The law enforcement gets called to it. When you get there, the person has taken two different types of prescription drugs, but doesn't have a prescription for the drugs. So your investigators then need to track down those prescriptions, and are the people that shared that drug charged? Is the person that took the drugs that's not theirs charged? How does the process go, just for my own?
Right, so if we get an overdose, and ultimately if it ends in a death, it's treated as a potential homicide and we exhaust everything, phone records, a lot of interviews to determine the origin where the drugs came from, because if you sell drugs to somebody and they die, you can be criminally charged for that. So we do a lot of work. Our drug investigators utilize every bit of technology to include, we have the technology at the sheriff's office to do the cell phone analysis. It's Celebrate is the program we use. So that's the signature of most of these drug users, is their phone is the roadmap of their life. So we do have successful investigations where we're able to determine who supplied the narcotics and illegal drugs, and then they get charged, absolutely. But it is quite a process and it's time consuming. Again, we're lucky we don't see a lot of overdoses in this county. We don't see a lot of them. One is too many, but we don't see a lot compared to other areas of the state.
Yeah, it was the time consumption that I was driving at. I mean, obviously, if you go to the house and they go in the ambulance, then you go to the hospital, you wait till you can interview the person. You know, you interview the people at the house, I suppose, too, and,
Yep.
I mean, I can see that there's a lot more involved than just
And we've
somebody.
seen where a bad batch of drugs are in the community and you have several overdoses out of the same batch of drugs. So the focus is to find that origin and stop it so we can prevent more tragedies from happening. But again, it's the underworld, and, but our guys and gals do a great job. I mean, we're really fortunate. I put that in my press release that the future is bright here. We have some of the best people. I will say this, the new law enforcement officer is so much more patient and so much more skilled than I ever had to be. People are challenging everything we do, so it makes us better in the long run. So today's law enforcement officers do such a thorough and terrific job, and they utilize the technology. You look at the technology we have just in our squad cars, and it's always evolving. And so I do appreciate the support you guys have always given us to keep us in the good technology, because it does come.
Okay, any other?
No.
Thank you very much.
Right, thank you.
Let's see, administrator, you're next.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just a couple things. Sales tax for January is down 17% from last year in January. So about $89,000 from last year. The tribe reported 0 deaths from overdoses in 2025. It's first since 2010. That's good news. Our medical examiner did 25 autopsies in 2025. The Apple River Solar Project is now up in operation. I believe emergency management is now working with them on their emergency plans, having them in place. And that's all I have right now for the report.
Well, if that 17% decline didn't get John to unmute, nothing will. Any questions or comments for the administrator? Thank you. On to Supervisor Rowdy and the UTV Council.
Just a quick update. The clubs were talking about the finances and the money that comes from the state, because they get $300 a mile, their maintenance and grooming. And at this point in the discussion, I can't go into the finances because I don't think any of us would understand them, but the state has a certain pool of amount of money, and it sounded like that was getting near, they counted toward the end, not the end of the money. It becomes, this pool gets smaller, so the clubs get, they set it on a prorated basis that they would get less money as the year goes on. but they're having a good year as far as keeping the club going and all of their maintenance. And they were also talking about quickly about a few trail changes with Rod. That's just normal things they do and try and keep people out of the ditches with getting trail that they can ride on and safer. So that's really about all I have for, they had a nice talk with Rod about different other little projects, but they update each other back and forth. So that's about all I have.
Any questions or comments for Doug? Hearing none, moving on to the 206 DNR emergency fire warden list.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is done every year. The two are the Sundown Bar, Saloon Bar and Grill, the Wolf Creek Bar and Grill. Looking for a motion to move this on to the county board for approval.
I'll make a motion to move it on.
Second.
Motion made and second to move the warden list on to the county board for approval. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good update on the bicycle pedestrian plan.
It's me. I'll make it official and come up to the podium. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. We're getting close to the end of the planning process for the bike and pedestrian plan. So I thought I'd give you just a quick background, a little overview of the plan, and then go over the next steps going forward to adoption here. So just bear with me, it'll take a couple minutes, but just a reminder that we applied for and received a transportation alternatives grant program for this plan process. It's an 80-20 split, so the county is only responsible for the planning process. We're also coordinating with regional planning on this planning process, mostly because they've been the ones that have developed the rest of our region's bicycle and pedestrian plans. And we figured the methodology and the connection piece that we want between our county and our neighboring counties in the region to be a solid part of this plan. Just a reminder that this is a plan, it is a guide. It's not necessarily a requirement. There's nothing in this plan that holds the county's feet to say, like, if you adopt this plan, you absolutely have to do X, Y, and Z. It's just, if you guys wanted to and had the time and energy and funds to expand the resources for bicycle and pedestrian opportunities in the county, this plan lays out where those things maybe should be done. We've held an advisory committee throughout this planning process made up of citizenry. One of them was in Supervisor Warndall here. We have the Bicycle Federation of Wisconsin included in that planning process, and several local officials, and the Woolley Bike Club. So we try to get a good representation of interested parties, the bicycle and pedestrian community, the Ice Age Trail as well, I should mention that. The advisory committee has helped us decide some critical plans and goals for this process. The key things that they wanted to make sure were in the plan are connecting our communities, so villages to villages, cities to cities, connecting to key parts in the county, like our state and county parks, and then developing priorities for route selections where we should focus resources if we were going to work on bicycle pedestrian facilities in the county. We all know that our roads are open to bicycling and walking, but this planning process is kind of identifying what's the best way to get between these two communities or to these different points of interest in the county. Plan also proposes minimal improvements. We recognize that the county is not always flush with money, so that where possible, we're talking about adding striping, if that's feasible, widening shoulders, if that's feasible, kind of the least financially intrusive policies going forward. We keep open the door that if additional funding becomes available, whether at the county level or through other grants, we can go further than that if we want to, but the focus on this is the minimal amount of effort to get this route established going forward. The plan also allows for improved coordination with, say, our highway department
that say if a county road was going to be redone, that this plan could be looked at, and at the same time as a road is being redone, we could consider those improvements of striping or widening a shoulder, those kind of things, instead of trying to do those piecemeal, which would be considerably more expensive to do on their own. Lastly, the plan identifies several priority corridors, and that's one of the things that they wanted, the advisory committee wanted to have come out of this. A few of those, and we'll see this in the presentation coming up later this month and at your next committee meeting. So a connecting piece between Osceola, Dresser, and St. Croix Falls, which would also include a connecting piece between the Stour and the Gandy Dancers State Trails. Loop connections around here between Balsam Lake, Centuria, and Milltown. Connections between Balsam Lake and Amory, which would also include connecting to the Algren Wildlife Area, D.D. Kennedy, and Apple River State Park, or County Park, excuse me. A loop route between Amory, Clayton, and Clear Lake. So again, the theme of connecting us to our different communities and connecting to key parts in the county. A loop route between Luck and the Straight Lake State Park, and a route along River Road by St. Croix Falls. Going forward, I'd like to just talk about the process going forward, so you guys are aware of what we're looking at to get this plan adopted. A week ago, we met with the advisory committee and we got a few final recommendations from them on what to include in this plan. That feedback is currently being incorporated into the plan. It should be ready in the next day or two. We'll get one more feedback from them via email in the next 3 or 4 days. And then next week, the plan will be available for the public. So we're going to host it on our website. We're going to make a notice made in the newspaper and then use our social media outlets to get the word out about the plan being available for public review. I would also share a link with all the supervisors for that for that draft plan. Going forward, we're going to have a public informational meeting held on the 16th of February in the evening from 6 to 7:30 in this building. There will be a public information presentation about the plan, kind of what I've gone through, some of the key elements, where the routes are. We'll have maps for people to scribble on, and we'll take feedback and questions and answers. And supervisors are, of course, invited to attend that meeting. Again, that's on the 16th from 6 to 7:30. After that meeting, we'll incorporate any updates or changes or recommendations that came from the plan, and we'll update that draft. And before the next committee, the Public Safety, Public Works Committee, we'll have the old draft that was available coming up in a week. And then we'll showcase the changes and have an updated draft for you guys. So you know what changed from the draft next week to the draft that came after the public hearing, or I mean, the public meeting. And then you'll have a public hearing on the 3rd of March, your next meeting. We can also have a presentation at that meeting to kind of go over what's the key critical parts are in the plan. And then we'll look for your recommendation to move it to the county board for adoption at their March meeting. Any questions on that?
I just comment, I took that map. I'm gonna go to Sterling Town meeting.
Okay, for the gravel roads?
Yeah, they had all the roads in Sterling, all the gravel roads, but there are roads in Sterling that aren't gravel at all.
Right,
They're sand.
Yeah.
And if they're logging that road,
Yep.
It's not Chevy Malibu will not get through there.
That's right.
Okay, so I don't suspect the bike will. So I'm gonna go show them that and have them determine what roads are suitable for bikes instead of driving them myself, because they know where the logging operations are and stuff. So I'm gonna attend their meeting this month sometime.
It's a good point. Like you said at the last meeting too, we're trying not to put everything up in Sterling, right? So we're trying to keep some of that.
Yeah, feedback I get from Sterling is we want no more tourism.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yep.
So now they got every road in Sterling on a bike plan, and that's not gonna fly with some people up there.
Yep.
Especially the further out they are, they don't wanna, they're out there for a reason.
Yep.
But
Okay.
Okay, we'll look forward to what you got to present.
Sounds good. Thanks for your time.
Got to ask any comments or questions?
No?
The need for any updates on our plan? Business plan, meeting plan, Mo?
No, I mean, we can add for next meeting. It'll be the public hearing for the bike ped plan, update with the MOU with DNR. Rules of order will be discussed, by committee each month, for each committee in March. And then the county board in March for the full one. Any changes done to the large assembly ordinance, and then before this board, current ones go off, this is the year the MOU of the fair is up, so we'll probably have a closed session next month to talk about possible negotiations and what you want to see changed in the MOU.
So my exit interview for the fair, that meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds like we're ready for the last thing.
Take a motion to adjourn.
Made and second to adjourn, those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?